Welcome back. In this lecture, we are going to take the lesson on how does the Razor pages generate their response. So let's see how it all goes. So as I just said that in this video, we shall learn how the ASP.NET Core Server generates an HTML response. We have already seen that the final piece of middleware in the pipeline is the endpoint middleware. Now the routing middleware works with the endpoint middleware to match a request URL's path to a configured route. So this configured route defines the Razor page to invoke. And after selecting the Razor page, the routing middleware stores a note of this Razor page in the request's HTTP context. So this we have already seen in the previous lecture when we talked about how the response is returned by the ASP.NET Core for a request to a static file, static web page or static resource. Now, after continuing the execution of the middleware pipeline, the request will reach the endpoint middleware, which executes the Razor page to generate the HTML response. The response is then sent back to the browser. Now, how Razor pages generate HTML? So, Razor pages are stored with the CSHTML file extension in the pages folder of the project, as we have already seen in the project structure lesson. The Razor files or the CSHTML files have a Razor syntax that uses Razor markup, C# and HTML syntax within the same file. Now this is actually on, I have put a link over there, so it is coming from the Microsoft documents. So I'll put it in the resources. The routing middleware maps the incoming request URL paths to a single Razor page. It does so by looking at the pages folder of the project with the same path. Now let's flip over to Visual Studio. So I am continuing the project that we have built, and I have just opened the index.cshtml. Let me open the index.cshtml, and I will talk about this open file also. So this is it is just like a Razor page. It's a Razor page actually. For those of you who have come from the ASP.NET MVC background, the .NET framework, I think this is familiar to you. But in this ASP.NET Core context, we are talking that these are Razor pages, look very similar to the view file of ASP.NET MVC. Now, here you have quite a few directives. This is the @page directive. Now, this indicates that this is a Razor page. Okay, and then the model directive, index model, it indicates that it links the Razor page to its page model. Now, a while back, this page was open when we started this Visual Studio. So this is the page model, and it derives from this is the index model, which derives from the base page model, and this is the model for this index Razor page. And this is actually, it has got the same name, index.cshtml.cs. .cs extension is just appended. Okay, we'll talk about this file, the page model file, in a while. All right, and then this part is the C# code, and it doesn't write to the response. So you can see that at the rate and then a pair of curly braces within which the view data, which is a data dictionary. Okay, view data dictionary, which is a key value is title, and the assigned, and this is key is title and the value is home page. But this part it generates a response. This is a HTML with dynamic C#, which writes to the response stream. And this part, the last part, is very familiar to all of you, I hope. Now this block shows just the standalone static HTML. Now in this listing that I have just shown, this home page corresponds to the root of this URL, / index in the browser's address bar. So let's run this application to tell you what I'm trying to say. So Control F5. So the browser have come up. Now this is the URL of this index page. Now I'll come back to this home page, how it shows in a while. So if you write / it will be the same thing. It's mapped to the root or is the index page. Or even if I write / index, it will be still the same home page, right? So now this at page directive here on the line 1, it's the most important. This directive must always be placed on the first line of the file, as it tells ASP.NET Core that the CSHTML file is a razor page. And this page, according to Microsoft documentation, it makes the file into an MVC action, which means that it handles requests directly without going through a controller. Okay, just like an MVC controller. It does the same thing, but it doesn't need to be routed through a controller. And without it, you won't be able to view your page correctly. And now the next line is the model. Okay, it defines the page model in your project. The razor page is associated with this particular razor page, that is the index razor page, is associated with the index model, which is this one, index model, which derives from page model, right? Now, this index model follows the standard convention of naming razor page models. You can find this class, as I have already shown, below, embedded below the index.cshtml file. Okay, and sometimes the old convention, the people coming from the old school will see the similarity between the code behind file of the web form framework with this file. So you can also say that this is a code behind file for this razor page. Now this block of code, which I have written, commented as it shows standalone static HTML. This static HTML is always valid in a razor page and will be rendered as it is on an HTML page. Okay. You can also write ordinary C# code in the razor templates by using this convention, @ and then a pair of curly braces, and whatever you write, you can write ordinary C# code also. Here it is also actually a C# code only, because this is a view data dictionary, right? So any code between the curly braces will be executed but won't be written to the response stream. In the listing, you are setting the title of the home page by writing a key to the view data dictionary, but you aren't writing anything to the response at this point, so nothing will be shown on the browser. So here, when you first created this project, this home page or the index razor page, it doesn't come up with this. I have created this just to show that HTML with dynamic C#, how it is written to the response. So normally you'll not have this one. This is just to demonstrate that HTML is also written with dynamic C#. Now another point to emphasize here is this ability to combine dynamic and static markup is what gives the razor pages their power. So in this example, you are fetching the title value, okay, title value from the view data dictionary and writing the values to the response inside a h2 tag. All right. Now, apart from this part, we also see a navigation bar with home and privacy and ASP.NET Core. This is the project, which is nothing but the home page, and a footer. So where do they come from? That is our next question. So the top portion, the header and footer, they don't come from this file. So the razor pages have the concept of layouts, which are the base templates that define the common elements of your application, such as headers and footers. The HTML of the layout combines with the Razor page template to produce the final HTML that's sent to the browser. So here it's in the shared folder layout.cshtml. So this layout is applied to all the Razor pages within the pages folder. So you can see here within the body there is a header which has got home and privacy links, and there is a render body tag and which renders the body, and this is the footer, right? Now this layer, the layout prevents you having to duplicate code for the header and footer in every page, and means that if you need to tweak something, you will only need to do it in one place. Now let's go back to the slide. So we have already discussed at model directive that links the Razor page to the associated page model as in the index model, and by convention this is placed in a file commonly known as the code behind file, that also we have shown, and page models that inherit from the base page model class and typically contains methods known as page handlers. Now let me go and show you what a page handler is. Now these page handler methods define how to handle requests to the Razor page. Let's switch over to Visual Studio again, and let's switch over to this code behind file that I was mentioning. This I have already mentioned that the page model, the Razor pages must derive from the page model. Okay, so this is the Razor page, which is actually indicating the index model. So index through the page model, these two are linked, code behind file and the Razor page. And this model, index model, in its term, it's derived from the page model. And dependencies, you see this line and up to the end of this curly brace is the constructor. You are injecting a constructor. So you can provide services to the constructor, and this is the final thing. This is the onGet. This is the page handler method. Okay, and then let's get back to the slideshow again. Now page handlers return either void like here, or it can return an action result type. And when it returns void, it indicates that the Razor pages template should be rendered, or an iAction result can be returned which contains either other instructions for generating the response, say redirecting to a different page. Now reading through the slide, all HTTP requests include a verb that indicates the type of request. When browsing a website, the default verb is get, which gets a page from the server. The second most common verb is the post, which is used to send or post data to the server. Completing a form and submitting it to the server is an example of post. For all of you who have come from ASP.NET MVC background or an API, web API background from the previous or even the currently existing .NET framework, are familiar with this convention. The index model just contains one handler onGet, which I have just shown, which indicates that it should run in response to the GET requests on the page, for the page. Now since the page handler returns void, when executed, it will execute the corresponding Razor page template to generate the HTML. Dependency injection is used to inject an iLogger instance into the constructor of the page model. The iLogger service is unused in this example. Like again, switching back to the Visual Studio, this iLogger instance is injected into the constructor. It could be used just to log any error or any information or message to either the console or response stream, or even it could be written to a file with suitable code if needed. Okay, so now we can see that the index model doesn't do much in this case. It's just empty onGet page handler and a constructor where the injected service is not even used. So the main point, the thing is, why I need this page model class. Okay, if all that it does is to tell the Razor page to generate the HTML. The main point to know here is that we have a framework available here to perform complex tasks. We can perform database operations such as loading data, sending an email, or even adding product to a basket in response to simple HTTP requests. Now this is where the power of Razor pages lie. So all I mean to say is that this class can be modified to achieve complex tasks. And the other important objective is to allow separation of logic from generation of HTML. If the logic changes and we need to add code corresponding to the change logic to the page handler, we don't need to touch the HTML code in the index Razor page. Okay, so we are less likely to introduce bugs. And even when you need to change the Razor page slightly, like changing the title to some other title, or changing the font, or the this class, or whatever, you don't need to touch the page model. Okay, so the handler method logic is safe. Now let's come back to, before ending, a figure that I wanted to show you. Now this is the request to the index page or index URL overview. So the HTTP request is made to the / the root of the root file or home page / index, that is at 1. Okay, and then request is forwarded by IIS or Apache or any other server or load balancer to the ASP.NET Core server. Okay, now ASP.NET Core server receives the request and passes it to the middleware, this chain of middleware. So what happens then? The request path is routed, request path / or the root of this application is routed to the index.cshtml Razor page, so that it passes through the middleware unchanged. Okay, that is up to here. It passes from 3 to 4 unhindered. Okay, unchanged, and then it meets the endpoint middleware, and the index.cshtml page handles the request by executing the onGet page handler. Okay, so and then when it meets here, it is ready to send a response. So the pipeline, it starts flowing in the reverse direction to create the response. Okay, so the onGet handler returns void, indicating the generation of HTML response from its Razor template. Now this Razor HTML response then passes back through this pipeline through each middleware to the ASP.NET Core web server. Finally, at the step 8, HTTP response containing the HTML for the index page is sent to the browser. So in this lecture, we have covered a lot of ground. We have seen how the HTML response is generated by the onGet page handler and sent back to the browser, and also we have covered what are the advantages, what are the uses of different directives like @page directive, @model directive, and also we have seen how the Razor page can generate dynamic C# code without writing to the response stream, plus it can write the static HTML directly to the browser or the HTML response stream.